My name is Carley. If we haven't met, I think lots of us have met. I am the Next Gen Ministries Lead here at Numa.Church. So I look over the kids and youth programs. So much fun. Love doing that. And I love that we all get to be together this morning. So over the last little while, since our summer series have started, we've been in a series called Ordinary People. Maybe you've been here for some of those weeks, maybe this is your first time, but we're just going through the Bible, looking at different people in the Bible who are ordinary and get used by God. So who here considers themselves to be ordinary? Okay, lots of you. Does anyone think that they would call themselves extraordinary? Extraordinary people. Hey! Put your hand up. Go for it. I love it. I love the boldness. So the passage that this whole theme has been based off of is Acts 4, verse 13 to 14. And I think it goes up on the screen here. It says, when they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished, and they took note that these men had been with Jesus. And since they could see the men who had been healed standing there with them, there was nothing they could say. So, talking about ordinary people, we've taken a look at different people through the Bible the last few weeks. Different preachers have spoke on different people. And I really hope, as we've looked at those ordinary people, the ordinary lives they live, and the extraordinary ways God has moved in their lives, I hope that you've been encouraged so far to think that, maybe even inspired, that if God can work in the lives of those people, what would be to stop him from working in and through you and me? Because God loves to partner with ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And today we're going to continue on that. I want to look at someone else, very ordinary in the Bible, who's actually featured in that theme scripture, and that is Peter. So before we get into that, I did say we have a game. So we are going to be playing a game to start called Will It Sink or Float? All right. So I have here a bucket of water. And I have here a number of items that we don't know whether these items will sink or float. So I'm going to invite up a helper. Can I get one helper to start with? Who would like to be? Come on up. Yep, Tommy, come on up, Tommy, to help me with our first experiment. Okay, Tommy, can you tell everyone what this item here is?
An orange.
It sure is an orange. Does it have something missing?
The peel.
It's missing the peel. Do we think this orange is going to sink or float? Hands up if you think it will sink. Hands up if you think it will float. All right, Tommy, what do you think it's going to do?
I'm pretty sure it'll sink.
Okay, let's put it in the water and see what it's going to do. Had us on the edge there. It sinks. Thank you, Tommy. Wonderful. Take a seat. Next helper. Can I get another helper? Yeah, come on up, Theo. Okay, Theo, can you tell me what this item is?
Another orange.
Another orange. What's different about this orange?
It has a peel.
You are absolutely correct. This is an orange with a peel. Do we think this peel orange will sink? Hands up if you think it's going to sink. Hands up if you think it's going to float. What do you think it's going to do, Theo?
Float.
All right, let's see. Can you put it in the water? Can you reach that? Yeah, you can. You're so tall. It floats. Wow, how interesting. Thank you, Theo. Take a seat. All right. We're going to pause on that game. So exciting. We're going to get back to our friend Peter, okay? We first meet Peter in the Bible in Matthew chapter 4 when Jesus is inviting people to come follow him and join him on his ministry. Jesus is very new to the scene at this point. He sees Peter and his brother, and they're doing something. Does anyone know what Peter and his brother were doing when Jesus saw them? Anyone have any idea? Sophie? You're right. He was fishing. Peter was a fisherman. Now, do you guys think that Peter was the most incredible, world-famous, championship, caught the biggest catch of fish you've ever seen in your whole life fisherman? Everybody in the world knew about him? No. He was an absolutely regular, ordinary fisherman. That was actually a really normal job to have back then. Most likely, his dad did it, and so he just did it naturally, and that's just where life took him. So, we've got Peter. He's got a super ordinary job, that family business. Jesus came, saw him, invited him on his ministry. Let's get back to the game. Can I get another helper? Lucas, come on up. All right, Lucas. I think you'll like this one. What do we have here? Do you think this who thinks this Coke can is going to sink? Who thinks it's going to float? Okay. Lucas, what do you think it's going to do?
Float.
All right, can you test it out? What do we think?
It's not deep enough.
Ooh, technicalities. It is touching the bottom, though. Interesting. All right, stay on up here, Lucas. Help me out with something else. What do we have here?
Diet Coke.
Diet Coke. Interesting. Now, as a scientist, do you think the Diet Coke will do the same or something different?
Something different.
What do you think it's going to do?
Sink.
Do you think it's going to explode?
I hope it does.
I hope it doesn't, because we're not supposed to have drinks in here. All right, Lucas, put it in the water. Let's see if it does something different. Whoa, we're getting full. That's what towels are for. All right. That's interesting. All right. There we It did not do that yesterday. Okay. Thank you, Lucas. Give him a big hand. Wonderful. And thank you, Lisa. Yes, I did bring towels. I do have there's 2 towels in there. All right. Well, interesting. There we go. Science, people. Different things happen. Okay, let's get back to Peter once again. So we know that Peter was a fisherman. Jesus invited him to stop fishing, join him in his ministry. What do you guys think Peter said when Jesus invited him? He said, "Hey, Peter, do you want to come follow me instead of be a fisherman?" Peter said yes, Lily. You're absolutely right. Yeah, and we know that because we know a lot about Peter. I think if Peter just said, no, thanks, I'll stick to fishing, we wouldn't have heard much more of him. But we know a lot about him. He's in the Bible a lot. So he did. He accepted the invitation, left behind his very ordinary life and job to follow Jesus. Now, I am just riffing and guessing a little bit. It doesn't say this explicitly, but based on, some character analysis and educated guesses, I feel like Peter was the kind of person who wanted to live an extraordinary life. Does anyone here want to live an extraordinary life? Awesome. Hands went straight up. I love that. Yeah, of course you do. I think we all feel that way, at least at some point in our lives, especially when we're young. We have hopes and dreams. We picture ourselves doing incredible things. Maybe you're in soccer, and you're not going to join soccer and think, I hope I'm just okay at soccer. No, you picture yourself scoring all the goals, getting medals, maybe even getting to the World Cup like we just got to watch. When I was young, I was in dance, and I loved to dance and sing and act, and I didn't think to myself, oh, I hope I'm just like an okay dancer and a mediocre singer and a so-so actor, and maybe I'll do a couple high school plays. No, I had a whole life pictured for myself. I wanted to be extraordinary. I had my sights set on Broadway. I was going to be in New York, filling up the theaters, selling out shows, all the things. Of course, that's what you do, right? You picture extraordinary things in your life. You have hopes, you have dreams. In a way, well, we see that I think Peter wanted that extraordinary life. That's why he accepted Jesus' invitation. He saw the potential for something extraordinary in his life, and I think he pictured some amazing things happening. I think Peter wanting to be extraordinary is actually a very ordinary characteristic. It's such a human thing for him to want to do something amazing, to say yes to Jesus because he wanted out of his normal life. All right, let's do some more experiments. Can I have another helper? Sophie, come on up. Okay, Sophie, what do I have here?
Lime?
Yes, it is a lime. Who thinks the lime is going to sink? Who thinks the lime is going to float? Sophie, what do you think the lime's going to do?
Sink.
All right, let's test it out. Interesting. It's sinking, I'd say. Okay, Sophie, stay on up here. What do I have now?
Lemon.
A lemon. Do you think the lemon is going to sink or float?
Float?
She thinks it's going to float. Let's test it out. The lemon floats. Interesting. Okay, thank you, Sophie. Wonderful. All right, where were we? Talking about Peter. He wants an extraordinary life. He accepted the invitation from Jesus. There's so much we can learn about Peter's life and learn from Peter's life after he accepted that invitation. Countless stories in the Bible that teach us so many different things. Today I want to focus on one particular moment in Peter's journey as he was following Jesus that I think we can learn a lot about. And kids, young people, if you grabbed one of our booklets that was out front, yep, thank you, Sophie, holding it up high, and maybe you've been coloring it so beautifully, you can use this now to follow along because this is our Bible story. So we are looking at Matthew chapter 14, verse 22 to 33. And I'm going to read it together. It's up on the screen, and you guys have it in your booklets. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Okay, so we got a boat. It's far from land. It's in a bit of wind. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." Verse 28, "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," Jesus said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand, caught him, and said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they climbed back into the boat, the wind died down, and those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Pretty awesome story. What I think is really interesting and funny about this story, kind of makes me think about this game we've been playing is that at different times in that one moment, Peter both sinks and floats. And maybe when we're looking at this sink or float game, maybe some of you are scientists or, know a thing or two about physics, maybe. Clearly I don't. And you're like, I know that the lime is going to sink because of X, Y, Z, and I know that the lemon will float because of X, Y, Z. But in this story with Peter floating, sinking, all those things, can't really attribute those things to science or reasonable explanation. I can't even definitively say that it was because of his faith or lack of faith and trust in Jesus. Because the reality is, in this story, we see that when he stepped out of the boat, he did have faith because he stepped out. At least he sure felt like he did. And then suddenly, he looks around at the wind and the waves, and he begins to sink. But then Jesus reaches out his hand, grabs his hand, and Peter is once again floating. In this sink or float experiment, we have our guesses, we have our educated, reasonable assumptions and guesses as to what's going to sink or float, but how do we know for sure whether it's going to sink or float? That's based on guesses and what we can assume, but to absolutely know 100%, what do we have to do? We have to test it. We got to put it in the water. We're never really sure which item would sink or float. It could go either way, and then the only way to find out is to put it in the water. Peter didn't know for sure if he was going to sink or float when he got out, but he took the risk. He obviously wasn't 100% confident because the sight of the wind and waves did make him scared and falter, which I think is the most ordinary thing in the world, the most human thing in the world, that he was like both super gung-ho, super confident, and at the same time, super doubtful. He so desperately desired to be bold and step out of the boat, and at the same time, he was filled with fear, worry, and doubt. Who can relate to that? I know I can. It's what Peter does next that kind of sets him apart, that makes him someone we can learn from. In Matthew 14, verse 29, this is the main kind of verse here. It says, "Then Peter got down out of the boat." He wanted to get out of the boat, and then he did get out of the boat. How many times have you wanted to do something, but you've let your fear and doubt stop you? How many times have you wanted to do something, but you let your confidence push you forward? Peter took the risk. He didn't know the outcome, and he wasn't going to know until he took that step. Okay, we have one final sink or float experiment. Who wants to be my last helper? Let's have Lily. Come on up, Lily. Okay, Lily. What do I have here?
Apple.
An apple. Have you played a game where you bob for apples before? No? Wow, that's exciting. Who thinks the apple's going to sink? Who thinks the apple's going to float? Because some of us have played some certain games before. Lily, can you reach that? Look at you. Yeah, you can. It's floating, isn't it? Yeah, okay. Very similar to an apple. I have one final thing. What is this one, Lily?
Pear.
A pear, that's right. Do you think that the pear is going to float just like the apple?
Yeah.
Okay, let's test it out. Can you reach it? It sinks. How interesting. Thank you, Lily. Have a seat. Awesome. With all of our sink or float activities or experiments, because we're scientists here, they have been exactly that. experimental. The only way we know for sure is to put them in the water and see what happens. We have our guesses, but we don't know for sure until we put it in. Peter teaches us that ordinary people can take risks. And what I really love about learning from Peter and reading about his life throughout the Gospels is that time and time again, Peter takes those risks. And sometimes they turn out really great for him. But sometimes they really don't. Peter is well aware of his ordinariness, but I think what's incredible about him, what we can learn from him, is that he is more aware of Jesus' extraordinariness. And that seems to be the reason that Peter's so willing to take the risks that he does, to step out the way that he does. It starts right away, way back in Matthew 4, when Peter agrees to leave his ordinary job, his super dependable, normal job, and follow Jesus, who he didn't actually know at that point. He must have realized that there was something extraordinary about this man inviting him to leave everything and follow him. When we look at the story of Peter on the boat, it says in verse 28, Peter says, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water." This is what makes Peter so human, so ordinary. And what I think we can relate to and learn from is that he says, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come on the water." Peter's constantly walking the line between doubt and trust. He says, "If it's you," not "I know it's you." That's doubt. And then he steps out of the boat and walks. That's trust. Then he looks around and sees the waves. He starts to sink. That's doubt. In that fear, though, he cries out to Jesus, says, "Lord, save me," knowing that he would. That, again, is trust. He just goes back and forth, which I think is so comforting, because who here goes back and forth like that all the time? So let's look at Jesus in all of this. What does he do? What's his part? We see that Peter's just an ordinary man wanting to do extraordinary things. We see that he's a risk taker. Doesn't always work out for him, but he does it anyways. God uses him in the most extraordinary ways. Jesus invites Peter to follow him, and when Peter accepts, what does Jesus do? He brings Peter along in his ministry. Peter gets a front row seat to so many miracles. He gets to be a part of Jesus' ministry up close. He gets to learn directly from Jesus. What a gift he was given for that bold step of faith. And in this story that we're reading now, Jesus again invites Peter to come to him on the water. So Peter not only witnesses Jesus walking on water, Peter gets to experience walking on water himself. What an incredible gift for Peter's boldness. Time and time again, Jesus extends the invitation to Peter and to us into extraordinary things. Peter just happens to be the one bold enough and audacious enough to take the risk and accept the invitation. The reality is, I'm saying risk a lot because for Peter it was a risk. Stepping out of the boat was a risk for Peter, but to Jesus it's not. It's simply an invitation, and I think that's what faith is. Faith isn't taking random risks. Faith is accepting Jesus' invitation without us knowing exactly how it's going to turn out. When it comes to accepting an invitation, I feel like there's two types of people in the world. There's the one who's like, you get invited to somewhere and you're like, well, where is it? Is there parking? What time? How long do I have to stay? Will there be food? But is that like snack food or like a meal? Like, how should I prepare? What should I wear? Who else is going to be there? Right? You need to know all the facts before you make a decision. And then there's the second type of person who's like, yep, that's it. Coming. Awesome. Love it. I think we can all assume that Peter's a type 2 person. I tend to be a type 1 person. I like to know the facts first. Peter's boldness and risk-taking in this scenario, though, is not totally unfounded, because he clearly knew that he was in the presence of someone very special. He came from such an ordinary life, so I don't think he was always like this. I think it wasn't until being with Jesus that he started operating in such a bold way. Peter didn't step out of the boat because he knew that he could walk on water. Peter stepped out of the boat because he knew who was calling him to it. It wasn't his own courage or abilities that he trusted or had faith in. It was Jesus every time. Peter didn't want to be extraordinary just for the sake of it. He wasn't searching for fame and fortune. When I was saying how I was younger and picturing myself on Broadway, that was definitely searching for fame and fortune. That's not the case for Peter. Peter just knew who he was following. And he just really wanted a chance to be part of that. Peter wasn't content to stay a fisherman. He wanted to be close to Jesus. He knew that Jesus was offering a chance to walk alongside him, literally walking on the water. And he didn't want to hold back. He didn't want to miss out on any of the life that Jesus was offering. He wasn't going to let his fears and doubts cause him to miss it. And what I love is that he didn't let his fears and doubts cause him to miss it. But sometimes he caused his boldness and his, maybe you could call it thoughtlessness, to mess up a little bit, right? Like we see times in the Bible when he makes mistakes. In Matthew 17, the transfiguration, Peter kind of jumps the gun and assumes that, let me build a shelter and do these things. He missed the point there. But he stepped out in faith. He gave it a shot. In John 18, when the people came to arrest Jesus, again, Peter jumps the gun. He's defending Jesus. He's just doing the first thing that comes to mind. He cuts the servant's ear off. We see that was not the right thing to do. Jesus was not thrilled about that. He made the bold choice. It was not the right choice, but he did it. He tried it. And I think that's what we love about reading Peter so much, is he got it wrong. It gives us comfort because we get it wrong, right? I get it wrong. Even with those imperfect moments, Jesus sees Peter's imperfect faith, and despite the flaws, the wavering, the mistakes that he makes, Jesus still entrusts him with so much in his ministry. And we see that in Matthew 16, verse 16 to 19, or specifically verse 18, where Jesus says, "I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." Jesus gives him that mantle despite the mistakes he makes. And I think that's Jesus honoring his willingness to accept the invitation. So let's finish this up. What can we learn from Peter? Because that's what this series is all about. We're looking at ordinary people. God does extraordinary things. What can we learn? Well, we can learn that when we're confident in the one we're following, we don't need to be confident in our own selves. We can take the risk. We can step out in faith. Despite our doubts and our fears, we can make mistakes, because we will. That's what I think is really helpful, is that I'm not saying that you can take the risk because it'll work out perfectly every time. We see that that's not true. But we can still take the risk because Jesus is worth it. God can do and will do extraordinary things through us, even when we mess up and our risks don't pan out. We don't need to be anything more than ordinary for God to use us. I think we sometimes convince ourselves that our confidence, faith, boldness, it all needs to be perfect before we step out. If we want to share the good news with someone who hasn't heard about Jesus yet, we feel like it needs to be the exact right moment. We have to have the right words. We have to know their backstory first. We have to know, we have to prepare for it. We want to know for sure that they're going to say yes to the invitation or what we are telling them. But actually, Peter shows us that while those things aren't bad to think about and consider, we can also just give it a shot. Maybe it'll go well, maybe it won't. Honestly, and I think this is what Peter realized, that part's not up to you. That part's up to Jesus. Our part is just to get out of the boat and try. So as we finish this up and get to the end here, I just want to end with posing 3 questions for you as we reflect on Peter's life and these things we can learn. I've got 3 questions. What's keeping you in the boat? Is it fear? Is it comfort? Is it doubt? Is it unqualifications? Is it you're not sure what's going to happen? The disciples, as we see in the story, they had those thoughts. They had fears, doubts. They thought they were unqualified, all these things. They were literally in the boat. And likely when they were following Jesus and being sent out by him, they probably had those fears and doubts as well. Peter certainly did, and we see that time and time again in the Gospels. But we also see, what we also see is that he almost never let those things get in the way of his faith. His doubts came from being ordinary, but his faith was rooted in knowing how extraordinary the God he followed was. So what is it that's keeping you in the boat right now? The second question is, what is Jesus inviting you into? It's different for all of us on our different journeys and walks of faith. Maybe it's to mission work. Maybe it's serving. Maybe it's to sharing the good news or operating in the Holy Spirit. What's Jesus inviting you into? This can be both big things in your life, a relationship, a career shift, major lifestyle changes, but it can also be everyday moments. It can be the barista you see when you get coffee every day. It can be reaching out to a friend you lost touch with. It can be shifting those little daily habits. It could be signing up to serve on a team at church. It's not a shameless plug. I just have many years of kids ministry experience, and in those many years, as a kids pastor, I can't tell you how many times people would talk to me about serving or not serving in kids ministry, and they would say, "Oh, I could never do it. It's not my thing. I don't have that in me. It takes someone so special to serve in kids ministry." But I want to ask, what if it doesn't take someone special? What if it takes someone who says yes? And that's true of any team. What if you've written yourself off of serving somewhere because you're like, I don't know, I'm not good enough. It takes someone really talented to do that. What if it just takes a yes? What if it just takes an accepting the invitation? Peter was attuned to Jesus' invitation in big ways and small ways, from the major moments of leaving behind everything he knew to everyday conversations and the little lessons he learned along the way. My final question to pose to you is, will you step out in faith? Will you step out in faith even if you don't know how it's going to turn out? With our sink or float game here, we didn't know which objects were actually going to sink or float. We had our ideas, we had our guesses, but we didn't actually know until we put them in the water. Peter didn't know for sure if he was going to walk on the water with Jesus until he stepped out of the boat and tried it. You have no idea how extraordinary your life could be until you say yes to the life that Jesus is inviting you into and you take that step of faith. Jesus is always offering us an invitation. It's up to us to accept it. It's bold. It feels like a risk, but the invitation is there, and it's up to you to accept it. So as we close up and we reflect on those questions, maybe I'll just have you close your eyes in this moment. We can all close our eyes. And this is, as we said, this is a family message. This is for kids, adults, everyone here. These questions are for you. What is keeping you in the boat? What's Jesus inviting you into? And will you step out? And as you're reflecting on that, I'd love to just pray for all of us here, that we could be filled with the boldness of Peter, that we could be filled with the audacity that he had, and that we could be filled with the faith that he had, knowing how extraordinary the God we follow is. And so if you feel a stirring in your heart with answers to some of those questions, I just want you to think on them right now to yourself. Give them up to God. What could your life look like? How extraordinary could your life be if you accept the invitation and step out of the boat?